today I drove the car, so I thought I'd check the oil before I left the house, and the level looked good on the dipstick, but I kind of looked on the mileage and compared to my OneNote in my phone for the oil change intervals on our vehicles, and saw that last time I did one was like 54,000 miles, and it has 63,000 now. So that means it was 9,000 miles since its last change. So not something you want to do, especially on an engine with a turbocharger. So, and that my garage is still tore up from the restoration process. I don't have everything, so I had to go buy a new oil catch can. But this is the oil I've been using in our vehicles. Motorcraft synthetic blend. I saw a test on this stuff, and they were putting this stuff up pretty close to the mobile full synthetic. So if you're not going to go full synthetic, that's supposed to be the second best thing to get, and it's quite a bit cheaper. So I tried to change these about 7,000 miles, but this one went a little long. But while I have it up on the ramps, I thought I'd take a look at it and kind of see how things are progressing. Now it's got some miles on it. Underneath, while I have the little protective cover off, I like to look at things. Generally, this has always been pretty clean, but this time I had noticeably some amount of oil on this oil cooler right here, and I could see it on the front of the oil pan there. It kind of got me worried but when I did reach up there and take that oil filter off, it was very loose. I mean, I just barely put my hand on it and it turned. So looking at the stains around that area, I'm pretty sure that it was just seeping out the gasket there. So, and then the other spot I noticed just a little bit of oil starting to leak is right around the turbocharger itself. So I don't know if it's just starting to seep out the gasket on the drain or what, but I just saw like a drip right here that I wiped off. Let's get that a little closer there. Yeah, so you can see it kind of been running down right there. I'll just keep an eye on it. You know what? This is getting oily. So, but it's all up front, mostly where the oil filter is. So, and who knows? Maybe that oil there actually ran around the whole, from the oil filter out front. I kind of doubt it, though. I think it's probably starting to seep through the gaskets up there. Turbochargers get hot as shite. Most of the transmission looks okay, but now I'm over here, and I noticed that these stains going down here, so it seems to be pretty baked on already. So it wasn't dripping or anything right here, so I'm like, so I'll have to keep an eye on that. And what I noticed is there's a transmission fluid vent cap right there, and it can come off to look down into the engine. And there's looks like it's on some soft rubber. Soft rubber right there. Looks like it just kind of plugs on top. So that's probably not perfect anymore. And it looks like it starts from there and runs down, around the transmission a little bit. So I'm just going to keep an eye on that. If not worth really getting into yet. Most of the engine you can't see unless you take the plastic cover off on these. So there it is, the little tiny 1.6 liter inline 4-cylinder. Got a little bit of oil seepage right there now. So, but just keep an eye on it. So I gotta make sure it doesn't start leaking like a Chevy, because that would suck. But other than that, it's still running pretty good. These aren't much bigger than a large motorcycle engine, but being turbocharged, they got torque like a V6. So, it's a pretty spunky car from a dead stop. It will actually rip these rather large tires on these SUVs. These are 235 55 17s. Man. Years ago, you'd never get a little 1.6 liter 4-cylinder to spin tires of that size, but this thing does it every time if you don't baby it. And if you take the traction control off, it'll spin them or at least one tire, without mercy. it's been doing okay. So far, the only repairs I've had to do to this was this overflow cracked. It is Arizona, and I had to replace it just after warranty. Pretty easy thing to replace. And then the other part was what they gave me that code was for that coolant bypass valve right there. And it seems to have been okay since I replaced that. So anyway, I'm just gonna finish this up. I thought I'd do a little bit of show and tell how this car's been doing. So it is gonna be paid off next year. So at that point, it will be 6 years old. So the wife's driving it. I drove it initially in place of my Durango, and then when I went back out in the field and got a company vehicle, my wife started driving it. And actually, I've been doing that for about 5 years, almost 5 years. So she's probably been driving this pretty regularly for about 4 to 5 years. Stop and go traffic in the Arizona desert. So that is some hard use on a vehicle. AC running, just, stop and go through traffic. So I thought I should change the air filter while I'm at it. And here's the one that was in it. Hold it up. You can see it pretty much eclipses the light. Not very much light coming through there. The new air filter. Well, you could already see light through it. So I guess it was dirty. That's probably only been replaced once. So yeah, see if it actually picks up a little bit of power. A little test drive after changing oil. This thing's always been a little touch on the throttle. It always scratches the tires. That was barely touching the throttle. You can always hear the tires go. And if you get onto it hard at all, the traction control light usually comes on. Which it just did right there. And oops, driver assist, traction control. And let's give this thing a little test. While in front of traffic here. Spun pretty good right there. But for a mid-size SUV, it gets out of its own way pretty good. Now, the thing I noticed about the small EcoBoost is it's impressive from a dead stop for a 4-cylinder like this, a really small 4-cylinder as this is, to have really good initial grunt, like right off the line. However, once it's up to higher RPMs, it no longer feels like a turbo, like it doesn't feel like a performance engine or anything like that. It just feels pretty normal. So like the V6 that it would replace would be probably pretty equivalent at that point. So once you're already rolling, if you just punch it, it goes, but it just doesn't, I don't know, you just don't get that sense of high top end like we get on our Pentastar engine in our Dodge. Once it gets in the high RPMs, it really starts pulling. It feels like a performance engine. This pulls real low and quick and then never gives you that sense of acceleration, as it revs up into the upper RPMs. It actually seems to plateau around 4,000 or 5,000 RPMs, and then it's done. So it is what it is. I think it's pretty good because the engine, this is a medium-sized, to small SUV with a relatively small engine. 1.6 liters is pretty small, and the new ones are 1.5 liter. They might even have more power. I don't know. I haven't really looked it up, but I know they're always trying to, now that this is about paid off, they're always sending me junk mail from the dealerships trying to get me to, trade this in, because they'll give me, it's worth more than I owe. So, but there's no point. I think at this point we'll keep this. The wife could keep driving it. It seems to get about 23 miles per gallon average pretty much every tank in the city. It's not great for when you think of a 1.6 liter, but it's not a little tiny car. It's it's big for a car or small for an SUV. But my Dodge Durango was giving me 13 miles per gallon average. So when I went from that to this, I almost doubled my average miles per gallon. The Durango got as good as 18 miles per gallon on the highway, And then if I stepped up to like 75, 80, like on the interstates, it would drop as low as like 15 miles per gallon highway, a four-wheel drive Durango. Where this gives me as high as 30, 31 miles per gallon, slower highway speeds, and then, high 20s, close to 30, on the 65 to 75 miles an hour speeds. And if you go through the mountains, it averages, on a longer run about 27, 28 miles per gallon, with a couple spurts of hauling ass. Because when you go up in the high altitude, it still has its full power, where non-turbo, non-supercharged cars do not. And they might be now producing only about 80% of their power once you get up to Payson. Between Payson and Flagstaff, they drop very noticeably, where this still has its full output. And I just fly by those people when you go up the hills, because this will still do over 100 pretty much up any of those hills. So it's definitely not slow. It's not a sports car, but it definitely is a sleeper. So we'll probably keep it for a little while, unless something major starts going on it.